I am a veterinarian. I say that first because it matters for what I am about to tell you. Not because being a veterinarian makes me more credible than other people, but because being a veterinarian means I have spent 30 years learning to observe animals, to read behavior, to distinguish between what an animal is doing and what I want it to be doing, to be precise about what I actually saw, rather than what I inferred from what I saw. Those are the skills I am bringing to this. I want you to know that going in. My name is Dr. Susan Hartley. I am 62 years old. I have a large animal practice in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which I have run for 28 years, out of a clinic I built on my own property near Newberry. The Upper Peninsula is not a place most people think about when they think about Michigan. Most people think about the Lower Peninsula, about Detroit and Ann Arbor and the Great Lakes shoreline. The Upper Peninsula is different. It is large, mostly forested, thinly populated, and in the winter, it receives more snow than almost anywhere else in the continental United States. I chose it deliberately. I wanted a large animal practice, and large animal practices exist where large animals are, and large animals are in rural places. And the Upper Peninsula is rural in a way that most of the rest of the Lower 48 is not rural anymore. I have been here for 28 years. I know this country. Which is why, when my patient's behavior changed, I paid attention. Her name was Duchess. She was a 12-year-old quarter-horse mare owned by a woman named Beverly Coronan, who had a small farm about 8 miles north of my clinic, on a road that goes to the dead end at the National Forest boundary. I had been Duchess's veterinarian for 9 years. She was a calm horse. Calm in the specific way that well-handled quarter horses are calm. The kind of calm that is not the absence of awareness, but the presence of confidence. She had seen enough of the world and had enough trust in her handler that most things did not rattle her. In the fall of 2018, Duchess started rattling. Beverly called me in October. She said Duchess had been anxious for about 3 weeks, not eaten well, pacing the fence line at night, sweating in her stall in the mornings in a way that suggested she had been moving in the night, not sleeping. I went out and examined her. Physically, nothing. No lameness, no illness, no teeth issues, no pain response. I asked Beverly about changes, new animals, new people, changes in routine, changes in the fields around the property. Beverly said, "Nothing has changed." And then she paused, and she said, "Except." I said, "Except what?" She said, "I don't know if this is related." I said, "Tell me anyway." She said, "Something has been coming to the fence line at night, on the north side, where the property backs up to the National Forest. I can see where it has been standing, in the mud. And I found tracks, once after a rain." I said, "What kind of tracks?" She described them. I stood in Beverly's barn, with Duchess moving restlessly behind me, and I listened to the description, and I said nothing for a moment. And then I said, "I'd like to see the area." The north fence line of Beverly's property ran along the forest boundary, which was marked by a line of old cedar posts that had been there longer than either of us. On the forest side of the fence, the land dropped away into a dense stand of balsam fir, and beyond that, I knew, because I had driven that road in every season for 28 years. It went back into the National Forest without significant interruption for about 40 miles. 40 miles of old growth and second growth and swamp and drainage, without a road through it. A lot of country. a lot of room for things. Beverly showed me where it had been standing. The grass on the forest side of the fence was pressed down, in a rough oval, about 10 feet in diameter, as if something large had been standing there, in the same spot, long enough to compress the grass significantly. The oval was about 15 feet from the fence, just outside the fence line. Not at the fence, at a distance from the fence. Beverly said, "It's been there, I think, for about 6 weeks, almost every night. Sometimes I can hear it. Not sounds, exactly. Movement, heavy movement, in the balsam, when the wind is the wrong direction to carry it away." I looked at the pressed grass. I looked at the balsam fir. I am a veterinarian. I think about animal behavior. And I thought, this is the behavior of something that is curious about the horses, but is being careful about the horses. Something that has found a distance from which it can observe without disturbing, and is maintaining that distance consistently, night after night. That is not predator behavior. Predators do not maintain a respectful distance from prey over 6 weeks. Predators close the distance, or they move on. This wasn't closing the distance. This was staying at the same spot, at the same distance, night after night. I said to Beverly, "I want to put a camera out here." She said, "I already did." She showed me the footage. I watched it 3 times. I'm going to tell you what was on the footage. Not what I think it was. What was on the footage? The camera was a trail camera, motion activated, mounted on one of the cedar posts. On 11 of the 14 nights Beverly had footage, there was a figure in the frame, at the edge of the balsam fir, at the same distance, 15 feet from the fence. The footage was not high resolution. Trail cameras in 2018 in rural Michigan were not high resolution. It was grainy, and the timestamp said the visits were between 11 at night and 3 in the morning, which meant the camera's night vision was doing most of the work. But you could see the shape. Very large, upright. Not a bear. I want to be clear about that. I've been working with animals in this country for 28 years, and I know what a bear looks like on a trail camera, and this was not a bear. Bears on trail cameras are low to the ground, or they rear up and come back down. This was upright, consistently, for the duration of every clip. The clips averaged about 4 minutes each, 11 nights, 4 minutes each. Just standing, at the fence line, looking at the horses. On 3 of the clips, Duchess was visible, standing at her end of the paddock, which was the south end, as far from the north fence as she could be. Aware, clearly aware, in the way that horses are aware of things they are not sure about, but not panicking. Staying. On one clip, Beverly's other horse, a younger gelding named Ringo, approached the north fence. He stood at the fence for about 30 seconds, looking at the shape in the balsam. And then he went back to Duchess, and they stood together at the south end of the paddock. For the rest of that clip, the shape did not move. It just watched them go. I sat with Beverly in her kitchen after we watched the footage. We drank coffee. We did not say much for a while. Beverly said, "What do you think it is?" I said, "I think you know what it is." She said, "Is it dangerous?" I said, "I don't know. I don't have enough data." And then I said, "But I can tell you what it is not doing. It is not attempting to enter the property. It is not testing the fence. It is not attempting to separate the horses or disturb them beyond their awareness of its presence. It is maintaining a consistent distance. It is observing." Beverly said, "Why?" I said, "I don't know. Curiosity is my best guess. The horses are something it hasn't seen before, or doesn't see often. It's interested. It's watching them the way I watch a new patient, trying to understand. Beverly thought about that. She said, "Should I try to scare it off?" I said, "I wouldn't." She said, "Why not?" I said, "Because it has been there for 6 weeks, and it hasn't done anything. And because whatever you did to scare it might not work. And then you would have done something hostile to something you don't fully understand. And I don't know what the response to that would be." Beverly said, "So I just leave it alone?" I said, "I think so." Yes, she did. Duchess settled down by December, not because the figure stopped coming. Beverly told me in December that the camera still showed it, 2 or 3 times a week, at the same distance, at the same spot. Duchess settled down because, I think, she made her own assessment. 6 weeks of something appearing at the fence line and doing nothing. 6 weeks of the same distance, the same stillness, the same quality of attention. Horses are prey animals. They are very good at reading threat. Duchess had read the situation and concluded, in whatever way a horse concludes things, that whatever was at the north fence was not a threat. It was strange. It was large. It was something she had never encountered before. But it was not going to come through the fence, and she had decided to live with it. I think about that decision sometimes. Duchess made it faster than most people would. She had better tools for it than most people do. She had spent 12 years learning to read the difference between a thing that was dangerous and a thing that was merely unfamiliar. Most of us conflate those two things. Duchess did not conflate them. The camera stopped getting footage in March. Beverly assumed it had moved on. I went out in April, when the snow was going, to look at the north fence line. The pressed oval in the grass had grown back, but at the edge of the balsam fir, where the ground was soft from snowmelt, I found one clear track. I photographed it. I measured it. I documented it the way I document things I want to remember accurately. Large, flat-footed, 5 toes, no claw marks. The depth suggested significant weight. I stood at the edge of the balsam fir for a long time, looking into the forest, 40 miles of country behind that tree line. No road through it. A lot of room for things, I said, out loud, to the balsam and whatever was in it, or had been in it. I hope the horses were interesting. And then I walked back to my truck, and I drove to my next call, because I am a veterinarian, and there is always a next call. But I think about Beverly's horses. I think about Duchess, standing at the south end of the paddock, aware, cautious, ultimately unbothered. I think about Ringo, young and less experienced, going to the fence for 30 seconds to look directly at the thing in the balsam, and then going back to the older horse. I think about the shape on the trail camera footage, 11 nights, 4 minutes each, just watching. And I think, that is patience, real patience, the kind that does not require a result, the kind that is complete in itself. Standing in the dark, in a Michigan winter, at a consistent distance, watching something you have never seen before, for 6 weeks, without demanding anything from the watching. That is patience. I have tried to bring that quality to my work. I have not always succeeded. But I try, because of 11 nights of trail camera footage, in Newbury, Michigan, in the fall of 2018. And a 12-year-old quarter-horse mare named Duchess, who figured out faster than I did that strange is not the same as dangerous. She was a good patient. She always was.